As we've been discussing, our social and economic stability are inseparable from environmental health, which makes it essential for all of us to be ecologically literate. And the first step to becoming ecologically literate is to understand the four processes of nature that drive Earth's entire ecosystem. Because these four processes are the foundation which sustains all life, all civilizations, all economies, and all human endeavor. And they are the water cycle, the mineral cycle, biodiversity or community dynamics, and energy flow. When biodiversity is low, none of these processes can function effectively. For example, in arid or brittle environments, advanced desertification has severely damaged the ecosystem processes, which has resulted in rainfall no longer being effective, leading to an increase in both droughts and floods. In arid or brittle environments like Zimbabwe, we lose over 80% of our precious rainfall to runoff and evaporation instead of it being filtered down through plant roots and soil to replenish our underground water reservoirs. So in this section of the workbook, students will learn about the brittleness scale and discover new insights into why Earth's environments respond completely differently to the same tools or influences at either end of that scale. So on the brittleness scale, a rainforest would be a 1 and a desert would be a 10. Now, brittleness is not determined by the amount of rain an area receives, but by how rainfall and moisture are distributed throughout the year. So a non-brittle environment is constantly humid and has a very high level of moisture in the air and soil all year round. Microorganisms in non-brittle environments can remain constantly active because they are activated by moisture, which means vegetation and plants grow and die throughout the year and are being broken down and decomposing quickly due to constantly high numbers of insects and microorganisms. It's hard to create bare ground in non-brittle environments because nature is able to cover it up so quickly. But brittle environments are very, very different because they have a short wet season followed by a long dry season. Moisture is unevenly distributed throughout the year. This means that vegetation cannot break down all year round. During the rainy season, the vegetation and microorganism populations build right up. But when the rains stop, insect and microorganism activity is greatly reduced and they go into dormancy during the dry period. But all the dead vegetation has to be biologically broken down before the next growing or rainy season. And the insects and microorganisms can only be activated by moisture. So, in the past, what was providing the moisture for the microorganisms to stay active and able to break down all that vegetation during our long, dry months of the year? Herds of animals, millions of them. In brittle environments, the moisture needed for insects and microorganisms to break down vegetation during the long, dry seasons is only found in the guts, dung, and urine of herding animals. And something needed to keep those vast herds moving and behaving naturally. Do you know what that was? Pack hunting predators. The bigger the herd, the safer the individual. The presence of large herds of grazing animals is vital because they consume plant material while it's still green and growing, and they continue consuming it long after the growth has stopped into the dry season. Then they trample what they don't eat into the ground, spreading dung and urinating on it as they go. This forms a perfect protective, fertilized mulch over the soil. So while all this is going on, many, many trillions of microorganisms are feeding on and being activated by the food and moisture in the animal's guts, dung, and urine to begin breaking down that plant material. The soil is covered and perfectly mulched, ready to catch rain and filter it down through the soil and roots to our underground water systems and rivers. Herds and their predators are designed to do on a huge scale exactly what any gardener would do to get seeds to grow. First, they loosen the sealed soil surface with their hooves. Then they bury the seed slightly and compact the soil around the seed, and then they cover the surface with a fertilized mulch. Many people blame herding animals for overgrazing, but we cannot blame the animals. Our management causes the unnatural behavior and movement of both wild and domestic animals. Overgrazing occurs when an animal remains in an area too long and grazes the same plant repeatedly as it's trying to regrow, or when the animal returns to a previously grazed area and regrazes the plant before it's recovered from the last grazing. Overgrazing is caused by a factor of time, not animal type or numbers. So, the correct timing and impact of all herding animals is absolutely critical to brittle environments. When herds stay too long, plants get overgrazed, but if herds don't bunch together or don't stay in an area long enough, the soil surface doesn't get sufficiently loosened or mulched. And this results in damaging over-rest of soil and vegetation. The timing is perfected by predators who keep the herds bunched together and constantly moving, ensuring the health and survival of the whole. In non-brittle environments, rest is the most powerful tool we have to restore biodiversity and soil cover. But in very brittle environments, rest, partial or total, is extremely damaging to biodiversity and soil cover. Over-resting land is the leading cause of desertification and is a biological problem which will never ever be solved using technology. Only the correct timing and impact of grazing animals, both wild and domestic, can reverse it.